Part 2. Moscow is a vastly different city from when I paid my first visit there in January 1947. In those days, the whole Russian nation was recovering from the trials and tribulations of Hitler's war. The destruction caused by the German invasion of 1941 and by the subsequent fighting was very evident. The people were poorly clad. Food was scarce. Housing conditions were appalling, and that problem seemed almost impossible of solution. On my return to London from the visit in 1947, I informed the British government that it would be different. It would be 15 to 20 years before Russia would be in a position to fight a major war with any chance of success, if indeed she ever wished to embark on such a course, which I doubted. Those were the days of the Stalin regime, and the people looked depressed and frightened. Today all that has changed. The Stalin regime has passed away. Food seems to be plentiful. The children look well and happy. The housing problem has been tackled energetically, and great blocks of flats have sprung up in the main cities. The secret police do not operate as before. There seemed to be more freedom for everybody and less fear. And the people generally are much better dressed. By that I mean that the quality of the clothing looked far better than formerly. The Soviet leader, Mr. Khrushchev, is a very remarkable person. He has a quick and clear brain, and you never have to say anything to him twice. Furthermore, he is a realist. He sticks to the point all the time. He has an amazing knowledge of the facts of any subject you raise and is never at a loss for his answer. In fact, one gets the impression that he is very well briefed by his staff, or else he gets on terms with all the problems himself. His office table was a delight to me. There were no files or papers, and all was neat and tidy. It is difficult to describe his face. He has an infinity of expressions which change rapidly. The Almighty fashioned us humans in clay. I reckon a modern sculptor would find it difficult to make a good bust of Mr. Khrushchev in sculpture. He is without a doubt a brilliant political leader, with all the arguments at his fingertips. You would have to get up very early in the morning to get the better of him in discussion. The marshals of the Soviet Union whom I met had all fought through both world wars. Marshal Malinovsky, the Soviet Minister of Defense, had served as a soldier in the ranks on the Western Front in France in the First World War, and had often come in contact with British troops. He told me that the English soldiers had taught him several expressions which they said he would find useful in France. He could only now remember two, and caused great amusement by repeating them at a lunch given in my honor at the Red Army Officers Club in Moscow. One was "kiss me." I won't mention the other one, it is quite unprintable. It was delightful to meet again my old friend Marshal Sokolovsky. We got to know each other well when he was Chief of Staff to Marshal Zhukov in Berlin in 1945. He is an honorable KBE, and asked me if I could send him some ribbon of the Order of the British Empire for his new tunic, which I did immediately on my return to London. He is now Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Soviet Union. It is often thought that the Russians are planning to attack the West the moment a favorable opportunity occurs. I do not believe this for one moment. They may use the threat of armed action, indeed of war, to gain their political aims, no more. But if ever a nation today wanted peace, it is Russia, in order to build up her economic strength and to raise the present low standard of living of the people. They have nothing to gain from a nuclear war. Indeed, they have everything to lose. But they think we want war, and will attack them when we are ready. I assured them this is not the case. Furthermore, I pointed out, like them, we have nothing to gain from a nuclear war. The West will never attack the East. Our strength is for defense, in case they attack us. It is difficult to make them believe this, so great is the suspicion and mistrust. And it is made all the harder by statements from our side about what we could do to Russia with our nuclear weapons. It's a curious situation. Two blocks, east and west, each thinking the other intends to attack them at any moment. And the plain truth is that neither side has any intention of attacking the other. I refer, of course, to an all-out shouting war, a nuclear war. Oh, an all-out shooting war. Different than an all-out shouting war? Can't be done in the same room? I mean, it could. But an all-out shooting war, a nuclear war. And the amount of money each side spends on preparing to repel attack is stupendous. It would be interesting to know if such a situation has ever existed before in history. It is almost Gilbertian. Gilbertian? I often recall the last verse of the poem by Robert Southey, after Blenheim, which runs as follows. And everybody praised the Duke, who this great fight did win. But what good came of it at last? Quoth little Peterkin. Why, that I cannot tell, said he, but 'twas a famous victory. The operative line is the third. The trouble is, the West spends such a vast sums in preparing for an all-out nuclear war, which is unlikely to take place, that nations cannot provide sufficient resources for scientific experiment and development. And for the Cold War, which is actually in progress, which is, of course, our main problem, and on the winning of which everything depends. A further trouble is that to compete successfully in the Cold War, the West must look outwards, and not just inwards at its own affairs, and it is not very good at this. Although an all-out nuclear war in Europe is remote, there are grave dangers elsewhere, notably in Africa and in Asia, which includes the Middle East. It is in those areas that the Cold War will be fought, a battle with economic and political weapons, and not military ones. And to lose ground in Africa and Asia will tend to weaken our position in Europe. In all these matters, the Western Alliance must see the whole wood, and not just fix its gaze on certain trees. The whole wood is the world. The Cold War is a global contest. We now come to the $64,000 question, or perhaps there are two questions. One, is it possible, given time, that the Russians can become part of Christendom? Many say it is not possible. For myself, I am not so sure. And two, is it possible to create such a situation, such a slackening of tension, that for a generation ahead, we and the Russians can live and let live? Perhaps we had better try and answer number two first. If indeed it is possible to live and let live with the Russians for a generation, say 25 years, then number one surely comes within the field of vision, however remote it may seem at present. Anyhow, it would be criminal not to try. We must not slam the door against any possibility of peaceful coexistence with the Russian people, if it can be brought about with honor to both sides. Well, I believe the answer to number two could be yes, but we will have to change our tactics. We must cease to hurl threats of destruction at the Eastern Bloc. We must cease to be boastful of our nuclear strength and what we can do with it. Bellicose speeches by service chiefs will do no good, and the East will have to change its tactics too in the same manner. Instead, let us visit each other. Let the chief of the Imperial General Staff visit Moscow and see the Russian military colleges. Let us invite the Russian service chiefs to visit Britain. Let us try to be friendly, like I did. It is not an expensive journey. My ticket to for the round trip cost £142, 4 pence. Zero, I don't know what D is. 4 cents, $0, I don't know. The government would get a good dividend from such a small expenditure. I certainly did myself. And the more trade we can do with the Russians, the better. That is a very good way to get on friendly terms with them. The Russian people like the British. Oh, let me read it. The Russian people like the British. I sensed that very quickly. Any friendly gesture by us could well open the door to improved relations between East and West as a whole. The Cold War will, of course, continue. That is very clear. And it will be a long contest. But in an atmosphere of live and let live for a generation ahead, the Cold War might well become less turbulent. Who knows? Hitherto, the West has worked on the assumption that it is not really possible to resolve the present deadlock with the Eastern Bloc, and that it may well end in a nuclear war, for which we must prepare. But are we quite sure about this? Is there a gleam of hope anywhere? If so, let us look for it, and, having found it, exploit it. Neither side wants a nuclear war. But what good came of it last? Quoth little Peterkin. And if we can find a gleam of hope, and we exploit it, and we find the right answer to number 2 question, the answer we would all like to find, then surely number 1 question becomes a possibility. And then we could hand over a peaceful world to our children's children. I'm all for trying. Published in the Sunday Times on the 10th and 17th May, 1959.